Hey everyone, welcome to All You Can Board. I am Dylan and I am wearing my toque again. It's because it's fall and I can actually put it on and hopefully not get too much criticism for wearing this toque. I know last time in the comments as it started to get to warmer weather, I had people asking me, why are you still wearing a toque? I didn't realize that this was going to bring up that much mixed reactions. Apparently it did. I need to get one with like All You Can Board branding on it so that that's my excuse. I just want to, promote the brand a little bit. But today's video is the games in my collection. I think there's 7 in total that I will never get rid of. Now, a couple things I want to preface before we even jump into this. Never get rid of is a bold claim. There are a couple things that could happen that would, make it so that I'm going to get rid of these games one day. I'm not taking into account, a game getting a newer version or something with new components, whatever the case may be that I want to upgrade to because of how much I play it. We just saw Galaxy Trucker get packaged with a new look. I think Seven Wonders did as well. There may be a reason to upgrade these games, get rid of them, and replace them with a new version. But that's the first thing I want to preface. The other one is this does not mean these are my 7 favorite games. This doesn't mean that we at the end of the year we might be doing our top games of all time. This doesn't mean that these 7 games necessarily are going to appear in like the top 7 or even the top 10s or even the top 20 spots. It just means that there's different reasons that we keep games in our collection. And for each of the games I picked, I'm gonna have a reason attached to it on why it's in it, why I'm deciding I'm never gonna get rid of it. It's not just gonna be, oh, I like it, it's one of my favorite games. One of them, for instance, might be the reason, but I tried to keep the reasons varied because I thought about it, and there's a lot of games, video games, there's a lot of books that I keep that I may not read again, that I might not play again, but there's different reasons I keep them. I have all 7 Harry Potter books still on my shelf. I don't think I'm gonna go back and read those again. But I have this attachment to them. I move with them every single time. Maybe someone wants to read them for the first time one day and borrow them from me. Maybe it's just a nostalgia thing. There's different reasons we keep things in our lives, even when we think we might never, touch them again. And that's sort of what I'm talking about here with games. I have different reasons why I keep each of these games for different situations specifically is a big reason. And also just, there might be one that's just a nostalgia factor. So I'm gonna jump into this. We're gonna talk about each of these 7 games and I'm gonna tell you why I picked them and why I will never get rid of them. And the first one we're gonna jump into is Seven Wonders Duel. So Seven Wonders Duel does happen to be one of my favorite games, but the reason specifically it's on this list is because it's one of my favorite games that plays specifically with 2. I'm gonna lay this down because the back of the box is popping out. I'm pretty sure every single component is gonna come spilling out and ruin this video, so I'm just gonna put it like this. This is just, one of my favorite games that plays specifically at 2. It's not the first 2-player game I'll introduce to someone if, they're new to games or they just want to play, a 2-player only game with me, because there is a bit more complexity than I might get from some other 2-player games that are on my shelf. But it is my favorite 2-player only game, I think. It still stands. It's going to take a while, I think, for that to be beat. It has the perfect amount of strategic depth, a variety. Every game I feel plays a little bit differently because of the different win conditions. Even if games are playing the same, there's ways to counter it or ways for that game to go that all of a sudden just put a wrench in what you might have experienced in a previous session of it. Going for a science victory or a military victory, having to react to your opponent doing those things. Yes, over time, if you play this, especially with the same person multiple times, you'll start to see a lot of familiarity in the strategy, and you'll start to develop your own sort of meta, and maybe then it starts to have less variety. But in my experience, because I'm playing with this with multiple people, and you can play it online on Board Game Arena and such, I just love this game. It's one that I'm just always going to be totally good with playing a session. If someone is wanting to suggest a game and they suggest this, I'm never gonna say, I don't want to play Seven Wonders Duel. It's just a great experience. I just can't see myself ever getting rid of it, especially because now I have a couple expansions for it. There might be more expansions one day. I think the only way I'd ever get rid of this is if they release a new version that had new things in it or a new look or something with advanced components, something that made me want to have it, that maybe then if they're, especially if it has all the expansions packaged in with it, maybe I'm upgrading to a new version because, I already have somewhere on this box, there's a big chew mark that you can attribute to my dog when he was a puppy and decided to chew the box. He also chewed one of the cards from another game I'm gonna be pulling out here. So the joys of having a dog. I don't think I'll ever get rid of this game. I'm pretty confident on that, and it's for a multitude of reasons, but mostly because it is not only one of my favorite games, it is a great 2-player only game, and I think everyone should have one of those in their collection. So that is Seven Wonders Duel. The next one we're gonna jump to is Sushi Go Party. So Sushi Go Party, it's not one of my favorite games. I like it a lot. I don't know where it would slot in if I did like a top 50 games of all time, but it wouldn't be in the top 10. But the reason it's on here is because when it comes to having a a crowd come over. I say crowd, but we haven't had crowds come over in how many years now? Almost 2. But I just mean like when you have a group of people coming together with a variety of tastes, some might be into board games, some might not, some might be into games in general, some might not. And you might have a variety of, mindsets in terms of learning rules and things like that. I've just found that Sushi Go, and even just the original, is a really easy game to introduce to people who have a variety of different tastes. The rules are very simple to understand. You're passing cards between everyone, so it's engaging with all the player interaction. It accommodates a large number of players, so if you have groups of 3, it works. If you have groups of 8, it works. That's why I like the party version more so than the original version, because I think the original only plays up to 5, or if I'm not mistaken. So I just find that this is the game in my collection that I can easily default to if it comes down to having a large group or, a wide range of tastes that, is going to make other games a little bit more challenging for people. I have games like Citadels that also plays high amounts. I have people that I know wouldn't enjoy Citadels, but would enjoy Sushi Go Party, and sometimes even just the cutesy look of Sushi Go Party can be an easier entry to some people who are a little on the fence with some games. So this is my sort of game that I keep on the shelf for those situations I know are going to arise. I want to have that default choice. And one that I almost considered putting here instead is Codenames, but I actually do know some people who just don't really engage well with like word games and that kind of thing. Even though Codenames, it's a word game, but I think it's a word game for people sometimes who don't like word games. It's just, this is one of those games that is my default. And a good example of this is, I don't have this game, Carlo does, but if I did, it might have taken the spot of Sushi Go Party, and that's Just One. So Just One is another fantastic game that you can, play in a variety of situations. It's easy to play with any kind of group. I just think everyone should have one of those games on their shelf. For me specifically, it ends up being Sushi Go Party. For you, it could be any wide range of games. I would actually love to hear in the comments, what's the game that you keep on your shelf, less because of your attachment to it, and more so because when you have certain groups over, that it's just a good default game to go to. That's the reason this is on my list. This is my default game, and I can't see myself getting rid of it unless I happen to get a game that replaces it in that genre and makes it so that I don't need to have this one in my collection. But either way, I also really enjoyed this game, so that's why it stays there as well. That is Sushi Go Party. Okay, so the next one we're going to jump to. This is Azul. So Azul is on my shelf and is going to stay on my shelf because, one, I love it. It's just, I always have fun playing Azul. But more so than that, it's one of those games that I think is going to function a little bit as my gateway game for people to the next stage of board games in terms of complexity, in terms of look, and just in terms of like understanding what this hobby is all about. I remember getting Azul, and I was already like really into board games, and if I had friends who also were, but I feel like this is a bit of a bridge to understanding what this genre or what this hobby has to offer, and just, I'm not explaining this as nearly as well as I wished I would have, but it's just because of how beautiful it is and inviting it is, you get people to play that maybe normally wouldn't be into a game with this depth of strategy, and then the rules actually do have some complexity to them in terms of which tiles get moved onto your board and how you have to, I have to hit 5 tiles on this row first, but then only one of them gets moved onto my board. That's a concept that can be weird to grasp at first for people who don't play a lot of board games or ones of this complexity, but it helps to learn the rules and get over that hump, because that will help you learn other games in the future and realize that sometimes complexity doesn't mean it has to be a barrier of entry. It doesn't mean that it has to be a negative thing. That sometimes complexity can just be something you have to get over to realize the gem that's underneath, and that's sort of what Azul functions as. So for me, it's not only a fun game, it's not only a beautiful game, it's that next step that when I have people that are really being drawn to tabletop games, that are responding really well to the things I've been introducing, this is the next step that I'll say, okay, let's try Azul. I'm gonna have to explain a little bit more rules. There's gonna be a couple tricky parts, but I think it's gonna be rewarding. And when I have done that, the response has been fantastic, and people have really wanted to play it again and come back to it. And it ends up being the gateway game on my shelf to the next stage so that I can slowly get them to the more complicated games that I have to offer. And then sometimes we don't get all the way to the top. I might not be able to introduce games like, Hallertau or Keyflower, which aren't by any means the most complicated games out there, but they're more complicated ones on my shelf for some of the people that are in my group. Maybe I don't get them all the way there, but maybe there's another level I can take them past Azul because they were able to get into this game. So that is why Azul is on my list. It's a beautiful game. It's a super fun game, and it is my sort of gateway game to the advanced level of games that are on my shelf. Okay, so Now I have no more games over here that I can pull over. They're all on my shelf. I decided I didn't want it to be too obvious which games I'm pulling off in case people were used to the backdrop I had. So the next game we're going to look at is Marvel Champions. Now, this shouldn't be a surprise to many, but I'm going to explain this because it's not just I love this game, that's why it's on here. This is on this list because regardless of whether, one day there is a game I like more than Marvel Champions, this is just such an accessible solo game that I needed to include a solo game on this list because there are going to be situations where I just feel like playing a game by myself. And I have games on this shelf that right now I would love to play. There's a game that we're going to be doing a how to play for right away later this week that I would love to play right now. I just don't have another person with me to play and it doesn't play solo. And this is one of those games where I constantly want to play it and I never have to feel like, oh, I gotta go see if someone's available, or I gotta wait until the weekend when I'm hanging out with them or whatever. If I have an urge, I can just jump right into it, and it's satisfying. It's actually really good as a solo game. That's the other hurdle, is sometimes the games have solo modes that say, hey, you can play this anytime, and that's a perk. But they change a lot of the rules, or the way they function as a solo game just isn't as engaging. And so yes, it plays solo, but you're not scratching the itch in the exact way you want. It's like having a really itchy spot in your hand and you just give it like a couple quick scratches and it doesn't really satisfy you. It's just, it's not going the whole way. So Marvel Champions is just a game that I am going to always enjoy playing solo. I'm going to always be able to play whenever I want. Yes, I love it. Yes, it would be on my top games of all time somewhere. But more than that, it's just the solo experience I think everyone should have at least one game of in their collection so that they can always be able to get a tabletop game to the table, even if they can't have their friends join them for whatever the reason is. So that is why Marvel Champions is on here. I bet you're expecting a lot longer of an explanation given how many videos are on our channel with Marvel Champions. But seriously, if you want to know any more about this game, we have a bunch of introductory videos on our channel and a bunch of hero videos that you can check out. If you have always been curious, I would highly recommend checking it out, especially if you're looking for a good solo game. This is a fantastic option. I'm going to slide this back onto the shelf. And the next game we're going to look at is Ticket to Ride. So Ticket to Ride is well known by many. The reason I am selecting it is pretty simple. It's a game that I'm always going to enjoy playing. I don't even know, if I was doing top 20 games, I don't even know if this would be on there because there's so many games I enjoy. So it has less to do with how much I love it and more that this is sort of the family game on my list. But I'm not constantly around a lot of really young children where I have to have really, really introductory experiences. So when I think family game for me, I'm thinking, hey, if one of my friends is bringing over, their child or is babysitting someone or whatever the case may be that is a little bit older and wants to play a game, this is not a hard game to teach to young kids. I think that I think sometimes people I know have not given enough credit to kids learning games. This is a really simple concept. It looks great and it's colorful and it's fun and it's one that I will play as a family game and not feel like I'm just doing it for the younger people that are playing the game. I don't really want to play this. I'm just playing it for them. I actually really enjoy playing this game. It's one that I will always come back to and I'm constantly surprised by how much I like Ticket to Ride that much. Or, oh yeah, I forgot how much I enjoy this game. I think I have one of the expansions. It's just a surefire game that it doesn't matter the age range of people you're playing with, you're going to be able to bring this out and you're going to be able to play unless you're trying to play with someone who can't talk yet maybe. But that's just sort of why I have it on here. It's a bit of nostalgia, I should say. There's a game that I'm going to be getting to right after this that is full on nostalgia why I'm keeping it. But this is, I would say, a bit of nostalgia, a bit of the family aspect, and then always having that satisfaction playing it as well. That's the combination of what keeps it on this list, and that is Ticket to Ride. That's one that I think less people are going to be surprised about, just because Ticket to Ride is such a well-known game and beloved by many that it's gotten to the point for some people of being Monopoly, where it's I don't want to hear about this anymore. Everyone talks about Ticket to Ride. I don't know. For me, it's just one of those ones I'll never get rid of because it'll always serve a purpose on my shelf. Can I get this back in there? Yes, I can. Okay, so the next one we're going to look at is pure nostalgia, the reason I'm keeping it. And I don't mean that as I don't like the game. It's just that this copy specifically I'm keeping for this reason. I don't know where it is. Where is this game? Here it is. I found it. Pandemic. So Pandemic, well-known game, popular. This is a very early-ish edition of Pandemic. The reason I'm keeping this is it's the first board game I ever got. If you've ever been wondering what was the first game you ever got, here it is. It was Pandemic. I know that's not super unique. That's up there with I got Catan as my first game. I got Ticket to Ride as my first game. But for me, that's the reason I'm keeping it. I don't play it all that often anymore. If someone wanted to play it, I absolutely would. Like I would still have a good time. It's just that Pandemic's been replaced by other cooperative games in my collection, by other games in general. But it's just one of those ones I'll never have the heart to completely get rid of because it kicked off the hobby for me. You know, it was the first game I got, and I didn't get a second game for a very long time either. But I think it started to like make me realize that I really enjoy tabletop games, and even more so now than video games. I have a way more satisfying experience with other people at the table, and especially in cooperative games. So I just don't want to get rid of it for that reason. Even if I don't play it for years, I just wanted to look at it on the shelf and remember that that's, you know, what kicked all this off for me and like got us to having this channel in many ways. I'm sure Carla feels that same way about Agricola. You know, yes, unless a new version comes out, but even if a new version comes out, there's so many versions of Pandemic. I have Pandemic Legacy. I still don't want to get rid of this. So it's just one of those ones that for my own purposes, for my own nostalgia, I'm just never going to get rid of it. And if you have a game like that in your collection, one that it just like you look fondly back on, or you have a memory tied to it or something, you took it on a trip and now you have, when you look at it, you think of that trip, let me know what it is. I'm really curious if you have a game in your collection that you keep, not because you constantly play it, but more because there's a memory tied to it. I think everyone should have a game like that in their collection. Let me know what yours is. That's Pandemic. I think this is the last one we're looking at. The last one is actually one of my favorite games. So this is the one I'm putting on the list that you will likely see, maybe even likely in the top 5 if I ever do a favorite games of all time. You've probably heard me talk about this game so many times in videos where I'm like, you know, mentioning something and I just casually mention this game as well. I think someone called me out in the comments for let's turn it into a drinky game, how many times Dylan talks about this game. I'm talking, of course, about, if I can reach it. Can I reach it? Yeah. Feast for Odin. This is one of my favorite games. I have many Uwe Rosenberg games. I'm sure I'm gonna keep getting more because there's many I haven't tried of his. This is my favorite one, and I'm just always going to keep it because I love this game to death, and I'm always going to want to play it. There's really not a whole lot more to say about it. I'd love to do a video. I don't want to do, this game is, I don't want to say this is an old game now. It's not an old game, but I'd like to, you know, feature this game in some way one day, you know, whether I'm comparing it to another game that comes out or whatever the case may be, just because I want to spread my love for this game a little bit more. I absolutely adore it. There's so many paths to victory. There's so many things that you can do in it. It's complicated in terms of the actions, but it's not complicated in terms of the rules, which is what I love about it. When you first teach the game, the rules actually don't take that long to teach. It's more the time you spend looking at the action board and realizing all the possibilities. And for me, what more exciting thing is there than realizing in a moment how many possibilities you're being presented with? I love that. Like when I play RPG video games, when I read books, when something opens, when the world opens up, when the possibilities show themselves, when the grandness of something is unveiled, that's such an amazing moment for me. And Feast for Odin, that's what I get looking at the action board. The possibilities just seem endless. Like I could take this path to victory. I could try this. I could do this. This person's stealing this spot, so now I can adjust this way. I love it. Then there's the deck of cards. Like there's so much going on. I can never see myself getting rid of this game because it's still, after all these years, has not left the top, you know, echelon of my board games on my list, and I think it would take something really special to replace it to the point that I would get rid of it. So that is Feast for Odin. I'm not even going to try to put this back up there because I'll probably fail and drop it or something. Those are all the games. I think I said 7, and did I actually do 7? I don't know. Count. Maybe it was 8, maybe it was 6. I can't remember. I'm not good at counting today. But those are all the games that I am never going to get rid of in my collection. So let me know in the comments what games you never want to get rid of and why. And again, not from the perspective of these are my favorite games, that's why I never get rid of them, but what are the other reasons that even I didn't touch on in this video that are reasons never to get rid of a game? You know, maybe it's because you have kids and you don't like a game, but your kids love it. Like that's a great reason not to get rid of a game, right? So let me know. There are a variety of reasons not to get rid of games. I thought this would be an interesting video to sort of show why there's some games on the shelf you don't hear maybe us talk about as much or are featured as much, but somehow are always back there. This is the reason why. Love to hear from you in the comments. Otherwise, thank you so much for watching another one of our videos. Really appreciate it. If you don't want to miss any, subscribe to the channel. We'll see you next time.